started.
Hi.
Really strong start, Gil.
Abraham Lincoln says master public speaking, according to the book Lauren gave me. So,
Yes.
Hi.
Nailed it.
Hey, what's up? I'm Gil. One time I didn't want to be a realtor, but then I had to be to build a business. So I took 50 listings in a year, and now somebody asked me to talk about it for an hour. I had coffee and I'm ready to do that. What I'd love to do is everybody that's here, the general principle is that we have aligned with these channel partners, i.e. Zillow Flex, Realtor.com, Ojo, App City, all these things. That gets you started. 80% of those or more are on the buy side. Sometimes listing opportunities come from those. And over time, it's very apparent that those companies also want to be on the listing side of the business. It's easier to start that funnel on the buy side, but the industry is moving to the channel partners leading towards a listing model. And there's a lot more listings or leverage in the listing side of the business than everybody on earth. It's a very predictable thing. And I apologize if I'm ever on the phone with you and get annoyed when you say, I eventually want to be a listing agent. Because it's like, if somebody takes a surf lesson, they're like, I eventually want to stand up. It's like, of course you do. It's like the natural evolution of Cro-Magnon to human being. You want to be a listing agent because that is the way the business is set up to be structured, and it's way smarter to do that. Now, while we have this chat feature, I would love if you have any questions about this to dump them all in there. If there's a rebuttal you've been getting, or a question you have, or whatever it is, what would be the most valuable thing for me to, if I have any, even pointing you in the right direction of, or an answer for your question, throw them in there so that I can try to address it instead of just rambling. Then I figured the best thing to do would be to kind of just describe how I did that. We did that. It wasn't just me. But I was the one with the boots on the ground. I can describe what that experience was like. I can just share the experience of going from 0 listings to 50 listings in a year, how we did it, what it was like, and what happened to make that happen, and answer any questions. And in the process of like preparing that thought process, I kind of came up with this. I thought it'd be useful to give you guys like actionable things that you can do that would like start you on that process. If you're expecting a quick fix, and to be able to flip a light switch. The only thing that might do that is if you shift your mentality, and if there's something that I say that changes your mindset about this, that unlocks a limiting belief that you have in your head about having the confidence to go and take a listing, that might be able to get a signature today. Of course, Marla's getting a house under contract right now. So that's kind of how I figured we'd structure it, is we'll go through that. So did anybody submit any questions yet? If you don't submit a question, even if it's what's your favorite ice cream.
No questions as of this moment.
Lauren's going to kick you out if there's no questions. So come up with a question about listings so that I got something that's interactive to talk about. All right. So the first thing, Joe and I, type it in there, Sarah. The first thing that made all the difference was, and first I'll be vulnerable and share a thing, like a fear or a reservation, or when I had 0 listings. Part of the reason that I had 0 listings was, the God's honest truth was, I knew that I didn't know what. I'm answering Jill's question right now. How did I get started? How did I go from 0 to 1? I knew that I didn't know enough to really I didn't know how to differentiate. I knew I had integrity. I knew I was an honest person, but that should be a commodity. Like, that shouldn't be a differentiating factor. I said, how am I going to be different than if I'm going to get a listing in Point Pleasant? Jamie Paradise is like a very well-respected and professional person who crushes and does a really great job. I met him for the first time in person this weekend. He was a stand-up gentleman and a scholar. How am I going to get a listing under that guy's nose? If I'm in Belmar, how am I going to get a listing against Eddie Shumsky? If I'm in Rumson, how am I going to steal a listing from under Mario's nose? You know, like, there's these people that you know, and you have this David and Goliath mentality around these people, and for good reason. They have a lot of value and expertise. There's also people in the industry, unfortunately, that I'm going to try to avoid names, but there's also people that are just garbage business people, unprofessional, don't know anything, self-centered. Some of them are actually convicted criminals that are still in real estate somehow. And those people are getting listings too. I wouldn't try to compete with those people. First thing I had to do was forget about that and realize that when you fly in an airplane and you look over the state of New Jersey, there are millions of houses out there and a lot of them sell. If you look on the MLS and just look at all the properties that sold in a year, it's thousands of them. And the killer agents that you're afraid of to go up against on a listing appointment barely sold any of them in a certain neighborhood, and none of them have a significant market share of all of those homes. So change your idea from scarcity to abundance. There's hundreds of thousands of homes, and thousands upon thousands of them will sell this year. And you just have to get one to go from 0 to 1. And once you have one, now you got something to talk about and you got experience. How did I get started? So that was the first thing. It was like I realized I was not competing against these realtors that had way more experience than me. And I wasn't trying to catch the trophy fish when I had never caught a fish before. I just wanted to get a listing. I didn't care what it was. And I wanted to go from 0 to 1. So change that mentality first. The second thing that I did was Joe and I set the goal of 50 listings. Like, it wasn't get one listing, it was get 50 listings. And we just fully committed to that. It was like 50 listings or bust. And maybe both of us are just insane people and that might not be duplicatable or scalable, but set yourself a goal that you're like really committed to. And if you set your goal at 50 listings, you're definitely going to have to learn how to get one. That's one a week if you're really doing it. So you're just like setting this outlandish goal. And then all of a sudden you're just like, in order to hit that pace, I better be sprinting the whole way. So when we did that, what that actually did for me was it turned on my brain to that, not like, oh, I want to get a listing this year. I want to become a listing agent by getting one listing. It changed it to like, yo, I am constantly searching for nothing but listings. Like, if I'm going to get 50 in a year and I have 0 already, I have to train my brain to just be hunting constantly and spending all of my waking hours moving me closer to my first listing, because every week that goes by that I don't have one, I'm screwed, right? Because now I got to get 2 the next week to make up for last week. So if you think about it like that, your brain is going to get trained to see opportunity where you would miss it prior. I have talked to people, I don't know if they're on this call, and I don't know if I want to call you out in person. You can raise your hand or admit it, but I've definitely spoken to people, and some of them, maybe 2 or 3 of them on this call, where they've had a listing basically in their hands from a Flex person. Somebody came from Zillow Flex trying to buy a house. And in the course of them being focused on their opportunity of trying to buy the house, they're describing that they're going to have to sell a house in order to pay for the house. And I'm like, whoa, hold the phone. You have a listing right there and you didn't even see it because you're so focused on that first thing. So if you expand this will be a graphic. I'm just going to flag them in this thing so that we build out the next version of this. If we can make notes, this graphic of expanding your sphere of awareness to understand where there's opportunity is going to only help you find them and see them. If you're taking channel partner calls right now, that is your first thing. You're meeting new clients, and some percentage of those people, probably 15 to 20% right now, have a home to sell. And you should be trying to prepare for that listing thing. So looking for the opportunity and then being prepared to attack it. So that's the thing there. In terms of committing to it, I said I'm getting 50 listings. In order to get a listing, I highly recommend a physical paper copy of the listing agreement. I might actually have one right here. I'm not trying to take listings right now, so I don't, but I do have one in my car. Like, it's like a CPR mask for an EMT. I would put 2 in my car. I would have the listing presentation folder in my car. It's the same way you have an ALM script right now. Get listing agreements. I went to the MLS office and I said, I called ahead. I said, hey, I'm coming to get some forms, the big ones. I need some listing agreement forms. They're like, okay, how many do you want? And I said, 50. And she was like, 50? What, do you run an office? I'm like, no, I'm going to take 50 listings this year. And she thought it was crazy. And so then I was like, just give them to me, and pay you like $600 dues. You can give me some paper. So I went there and there's a big manila envelope with 50 listing agreements. Now I have something physical in my hands. That's my goal. I put it on top of the extra refrigerator in our garage. I knew there was 50 listing agreements in there, and I took them out when I was going on appointments. And that was my goal in my hand. Like I had a little grid I was checking them off on, and I had the actual physical papers. And I was like, when I take one out of that envelope, I'm going to get a signature on it at an appointment. If I'm going to be doing 50 listings, they're going to have one a week. We're going to stack up. So I bought a case of super lock boxes at the MLS on the same trip. I was like, hey, I need a lockbox. I need lock boxes. She's like, how many do you want? I'm like, how many come in a case? And she's like, 12. I'm like, all right, give me a whole case. She's like, a whole case? I'm like, yeah, I want 12 listings at a time. And that was insane. It cost like $1,500 or whatever it was at the time. So now I'm like we're burning the ships. If you've ever heard that phrase, if not, go look it up. You burn the boat and you're like, now I'm committed. Like I spent $1,000 on this. I got 50 listing agreements. And now I'm like, all right, now what do I do with this? I'm going to look like a fool if I don't. So then I was like, okay, well now who's going to sign these pieces of paper? What I did was I aligned with Joe and listened to what he did. He's like, yo, if you want to get a listing, there's people that are going to sell their house. When they fail to sell their house, the listing expires. It's totally fine and legal to call them up and ask them what happened and see if you can be their realtor. Most agents, if you're looking for a mindset shift, most agents will call and be like, let me get that listing. If you call and ask about the property, you need to reframe it in terms of what the seller wants and try to solve their problems for them. Like actually be valuable. Don't try to get 50 listings. Try to help 50 people and actually be valuable. If you're focused like that, you're going to stand apart. I heard Jenny made a phone call and set an appointment. And the first listing appointment she set was like this. The lady said, a lot of people have called me about my property, but you sounded different. You have to just sound different. And the way to sound different is to not try to get anything from them, but try to give them something. And what you're trying to give them is information, and what they really want is a buyer. So if you think about being a hub of value, and this is a graphic that we're going to build out too, you want to be they don't know you from Adam or Eve or whatever. You want to be the point person that they're going to go to get information and bring them what they want. Raise your hand if you've heard this rebuttal, bring me a buyer and I'll give you 2%. Let me look at the gallery view and see all the hands up. Raise your hand if somebody's ever said that to your face. Bring me a buyer and I'll give you 2%. That's what they want. They want you to bring the buyer on their house. Sellers usually don't understand and see the value in a realtor trying to charge them 5% or 2% or whatever on their house. They think you're getting the full 5%. It's a lot of money. You need to actually be worth that amount of money, right? And the ability to do that and articulate clearly how you are that, and what they want is somebody to buy their house for the number that they're asking. A tricky part to navigate is understanding the respect of like, hey, you listed your house for 900,000. It's really worth 7. Nobody's going to pay 900. Right now, you're the highest bidder for your house. How do you negotiate commissions? I'll get to the listing appointment in a second, or in 20 minutes, but I'll get there. What you're trying to do, nobody's going to sign a listing agreement over the phone. You're going to have to develop some sort of relationship with them. The phone is one way to do it at scale. And I should finish telling the story of how we did it. I focused exclusively on expireds. I decided that was going to be the thing that I did. I got on the Mojo dialer. I called them almost every morning. I sucked at the scripts to start. I eventually got better and better at the scripts by practicing. And I learned to talk to people on the phone, even though I'm an introvert. I hated doing this. I never thought I would be a cold calling person, but that goal that I set was too big to pass up, and we just decided to do it. So I committed, I sucked it up and did it. I got a little bit better at it. And you got to remember this stage of, this is Keller Williamsism, is the 4 conversations. Like, you're not worrying about negotiating your commission until you have a listing appointment. So you need to identify somebody who's going to sell a house, and then get them to agree. What is a listing appointment? You've got to get them somebody who owns property that wants or would entertain the idea of selling it in the relatively near future, to meet you in person at the property and talk about the house, maybe not even selling the house. Because what you really need is a relationship and trust with this person, and for them to understand that you, and agree that you are actually valuable. So you got to set these appointments. And what we focused on first was the appointments. In order to have the appointments, in the chat, everybody please guess, to get 50 listings, how many appointments did I go on that year?
200.
In the chat, Ethan.
Sorry.
100, 80, 75, 120, 200 with an asterisk. I love it. I went on 250 listing appointments, right? That means if I took 50 listings, I was batting 20%. So if I went on an appointment, there's 365 days in the year. If I went on an appointment every day, that'd be 360, 65 listings or whatever. So I went on an average of whatever that is. I went on an average of 5 appointments a week, 50 weeks, 5 appointments, 250 appointments. I converted one of the 5 and got a listing a week through that year. So we were trying to set that many appointments. So the goal was to try to set 10 appointments a week. We did 1 week, we set 14 listing appointments in a week, which is totally fucking insane, but it happened. And by the way, it was 120 degrees that week in the middle of COVID. But we set that many we tried to set that many appointments, and when we failed, we set 4 appointments, and if I converted at 20%, I would still get 1 listing. So that you got to expand your idea. Like, if you're thinking I love Sarah thinking that I got 50 listings out of 80 appointments. I am not that good. That'd be converting like 70%, which would be amazing. Imagine I did that, I would have gotten like 170 listings. Then we'd have a real story. But that's the way to think about it, is to focus on that very first part. Once I had an appointment, then I turned to Joe. I did the reco call, and I'm like, Joe, now what? I got an appointment. They said, yes, I can come to their house. Like, now what? Then we had to do a listing appointment. And I was like, oh shit, how do I get the signature? So what we actually did, and this is how it's going to be easier for you, Joe just role played it out for me. We sat in the ghetto office in Asbury Park with no air conditioning. We role played it as if I was the seller. And Joe he just did what he does, and he role played the listing appointment to me as the seller. We acted it out. Like, I greeted him at the door of the office, like, hey, how's it going? And he came into the office with his laptop, and he prepared a listing appointment folder, and we acted out a whole hour-long appointment in character, seller and agent. We did the whole entire thing. And then what I did was I set up my computer next to us, and I put record on Zoom and put it on selfie mode, and I recorded our conversation. And then I went home and I studied it for hours, and I typed it out. I made an outline of it, and I rewound it and I made an outline, and the parts that were really good, I scripted out. And then I made a keynote deck that was kind of sexy looking that I followed along, which you guys have access to or whatever. And I used that as a crutch until I did it. A week later, I set an appointment with a couple that was getting a divorce in freaking, yes, scientific method. Exactly. I dissected what was working and all the pieces of it. And I built a system around it. So from that day, I was preparing for this moment when I'm like, hey, how could we make this scalable? Let's have a deck. And I put the exact words that if you hit the next button when there was no more words on the keynote deck, you would get yourself through a listing appointment, right? And the very first thing was like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm going to go through this presentation, save all your questions for the end. Let me go through it and I will explain X, Y, and Z. And then I basically I built that thing so that you could actually read it. You would look like a robot and probably convert at less than 20% if you just read it, but you would actually get through it and cover the main points and you have a chance. And if you did it enough, you would actually get a listing if you did it, I guarantee it. Now, then I just kept going on appointments and using that. And after I did it about 10 times, I had it pretty memorized. And it was awkward to open up the laptop and go through a PowerPoint presentation, right? That kind of sucks and that's weak. So I wanted to memorize it as soon as possible so that I could internalize it and have a conversation with it. The same way that many of you can, like, I'll shout out Gabby. I was on the phone with Gabby and I was like, do ALM with me right now. And she nailed it perfectly, like to a syllable, because she had internalized it. She wasn't ready for me to do that and she had it down. I did that with an hour-long listing presentation so that when I could read the room and the seller didn't care about marketing, they only wanted to talk about numbers, I knew to focus on that piece. And if in my PowerPoint deck, that part was 4th or 5th on the list, I didn't have that much time of their patience in the appointment to get through the whole my little spiel. They just wanted to hear this piece. But I was now prepared after memorizing it, butchering it on 10 other appointments. I was now prepared to just talk about that because I had practiced it. So the headline here is practice and become an expert, Mr. Miyagi style, in your basement, at your mom's house, at your sister's house, with whatever. Do 10 practice listing appointments with people who are not clients before you go on a real appointment so that you can stutter and suck at those appointments instead of the ones that you had to work your ass off to get them to let you come in their house. Because in order to get 250 appointments, we had to make like 25,000 calls or whatever. I don't even know the number. It was roughly 200 to 300 calls to get one appointment. So that's, what is that? 60,000 calls or something like that to get all those appointments. They're dials. They're not actually contacts or whatever, but like that's the number of 300 dials would each equal the appointment. So if you're working that hard, you don't want to drop the ball when you get the appointment. So if you understand the value of the appointment and prepare for it accordingly, like, God forbid, actually do the work, right? It's the same thing. Like if you want to lose weight, like maybe skip ice cream and start walking every day for 45 minutes. Like if you do zone 2 training and decrease your sugar intake from where you're at, like look at Biggest Loser. If they do a radical shift like that and they're consistent, they lose hundreds of pounds and it's an amazing transformation story. I did that with cold calling and listing appointments. I just did it every day until I got an appointment. And then I practiced until I got to the appointment. And then once I was at the appointment, I didn't leave until I got the signature, until they were about to kick me out of the house. I was just kindly staying there and being valuable as best I could until some of those listings, I definitely just outlasted them and wore them down and then left with the signature and the relationship and then proved my value over time. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but let's say you get an appointment. Does anybody have any questions on getting appointments? I did expireds. Raise your hand if you have a question burning right now, because I was about to just cut you off again. Hearing no questions.
My
I
question
can hear some of you being, I hate cold calling. I don't want to use Mojo Dialer. I'm never going to do that. Raise your hand if that's you, which is totally okay if it is. Okay, I see Lauren. I don't see the other screens, but most
Hello.
people don't like it.
I know
Yes, Lauren.
Maureen has her hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Maureen.
I'm so sorry. I was raising my hand before with the question and I didn't lower it.
Oh, no worries.
But not in terms, I know by mistakes people are DMing me. But I guess I'll just tell you, it says,
I didn't realize that.
it's
That's-
okay. Jill asked where the listing agreements pre-filled out, and then she said, where's the script in the university when that you used for cold calling? Sorry, I'll lower my hand.
Oh, no worries. Lauren, can you help me remember that?
Yeah, so
pre-
any of this.
Oh,
sorry,
where?
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Answer the question about scripts.
There's a section in the universe. So there's a listing agent section. And then there's a script section in the university. So it should be in there. If not, we can add it.
Jill's asking if the listing agreements were pre-filled out. Partially. So let's talk about preparing for the appointment. Let's say, first of all, I want to, people that aren't going to cold call, that's fine. Everybody here that's on this call, or pretty much everybody, is taking connections from buyers and going to, I'll give you another idea of how you could go and get appointments. Use those.
I don't know if it's. I
What?
can't hear you. Okay, now I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Use those. Eventually, those, some of your buyer leads are going to have to sell a house. So you should be, that's your opportunity. That's your golden opportunity. If you're going to wait for it, you're going to get one of them. They're going to be like, oh yeah, to buy that house, I have to sell this one. Awesome. Let's focus on this house first, and then we'll talk about that as a second. So like, give them what they want, get them all excited about, ready to write up the offer. And the proof of funds, when you're having the conversation about how you're going to pay for this house, they're going to say, oh, we're going to take the proceeds from our other house and do this. Sometimes they're going to have another realtor, which is a little bit hard of a rebuttal. Other times they're not. Let's focus on the time that they're not. Set that appointment. Use those channel partner things as a way to get the appointments. Also, if you can't do that, this theory of trying to triple dip or do 5 things at once. I gave this advice to somebody. If I was crushing Zillow Flex and taking a connection, I'm going to go look at properties. What I'm going to do is, number one, this is going to make you a market expert, which is what a seller wants and a buyer wants. You're going to, I'm trying to decide which way I should ramble first. Let me answer Jill's question since she asked it real quick. If the listing agreement, I'm going to an address, they're going to sell. If I'm going to gauge how likely I am to convert, or if I think I have a really good shot, or not. I would practice filling them out. So if you're new, I would go to the MLS, get however many your goal is, get 50, get 100 of them. Think bigger than me. Take them and fill them out and practice filling it out and get used to the form. I would study this form so that because sellers will have questions about that little legalese form. You need to, there's a video in the university with me explaining the listing agreement. Study that and read the form yourself. And if you don't understand any of the terms in it, go and Google it and look it up, or call the MLS, right? Or ask us or whatever. But I did an hour-long video explaining the agreement and how I think about it and what to do and what I fill out and not fill out. Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, if that's still in there. I think that's in there.
It is.
Yeah. So in the university, there's me rambling on Zoom by myself for 40 minutes about the listing agreement. Go watch that, study that, and I explain the parts in it that they are. So I would fill out the logistical pieces, and I would leave the commission blank. I would leave the listing price blank. I would leave the dates blank, but I would fill out everything else. I use a blue pen on a black and white sheet of paper. It's all tiny print. I put little dot, just a little dot that I know is there and can look for on the left-hand column where the commission line is. And I've now studied and internalized the commission spot. So I know what that paragraph is in my head, and I have a script around it. So that when we're negotiating or talking about commission, or I have to point to these spots, I can look down the column and find that little bit, a little mark that I made immediately. They won't see it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the legality of it or whatever. But I know that it's there as a place marker. And then I can point very expertly to that point without making it, there's no interruption there. You know, if you're a mechanic and you're doing something, or if you're a surgeon, your tool is ready and you should be able to just grab it without looking at it and start to operate, right? That's how you want your listing agreement to be. You should know it inside and out, frontwards and back, and then be able to navigate that thing very fluidly. If you start looking at it and be like, oh, hang on, somewhere is which one is the rental versus the listing one? Are you instilling confidence subconsciously to your seller? Absolutely not. If you have it memorized and you can look them in the eye while you're explaining the different paragraphs and read it to them, they're gonna be like, holy shit, this person really knows what this thing is. They probably know what all the other things are in the process too. I really trust them. Yes, that makes me feel good about this. I'm ready to sign that piece of paper because I trust that person, right? The understanding and the mindset of understanding that what you're really doing is establishing trust with these people and communicating your expertise to them. That experience is very evident throughout every step of the process. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if you don't know any buyers, if you don't know anything about the market, you can master that listing agreement and you can become an expert on that. You also don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but be prepared to dive into it if they're ready. Kyle Whistle taught me this or reminded me of this. Be prepared to go deep, but keep it surface level if they're not. Be like, hey, are you ready to, all we need is your autograph on the paperwork and we're ready to book media. Here you go, right here, sign at the X. Let me get your autograph. Call it an autograph, not a signature. Call it paperwork, not a contract. These things have feeling tones to them that are more friendly and less standoffish. Educate the consumer that they have all the power and you're willing to grant you know, I would use this thing of, hey, I'll give you guys an unconditional withdrawal no matter what. I'm taking 50 listings this year, especially at a time that I just took 4 listings the previous week. I'd be like, hey, I took 4 listings last week. I took 3 already this week. We have room for 4. Are you going to be the one? And I would just come from this place of abundance and say like, look, you need me more than I need you. I wouldn't say that explicitly, but that was true to a certain extent. And they can sense that vibe of like, hey, you're not trying to get anything from me. You're just here to help me. And if you can project that type of vibe, you're going to do well. So that's a long-winded answer to the answer to the question is really in 40 minutes in the university, study it. I would fill out all the boring parts, leave the commission and dates and listing price blank and put an X for the signature. Okay. Back to how to set the appointment. You've got these buyers coming. Some percentage of them are going to have to sell a house. That's great. Those are your layups. Ask for the appointment. 50% or 60% of them may be working with an additional realtor. At some point, if you're doing this at scale, one of them is not, and they're going to say, yes, come by and see the house. Why is that important to them? Like, why do I need to use you instead of my sister? Be like, awesome. In order to get your offer accepted on this dream house, that's exactly why Zillow connected you with us. We sell over 100 homes a year. We have a lot of expertise in this. And if you're doing I use this script of like, hey, if we're doing a heart transplant from a cadaver into your body, we're going to open up your chest and transplant a heart. That's a major operation, right? We're moving your family from one home to another. It's usually wise to use the same doctor for both. And you want to do this once you've established rapport with them and they're like in bed with you. You're what's between them and the house that they actually want. And they've got their sister or their friend from their high school soccer team that's a realtor on the sell side. Now you're like the heart transplant analogy, and you already got them the house, right? If they show up and the house that they called in on is not available, but you already got them 2 off-market properties to go look at, you've now made yourself valuable and say, hey, I can get you what you need and what you want. You're like a drug dealer. I got the stuff you need, man. And in order for them to stick with you, then you do the heart transplant analogy and be like, hey, so I can represent that as well or whatever and coordinate. Right? Then you get that appointment. Let's focus on the appointment. Once you're getting there, they're going to talk about the price of the property. We'll talk about commissions after we talk about price. I'll talk about the price of the property. If we're talking about expireds, usually that property didn't sell because the seller had unrealistic expectations about the market value of their property. End of story. So you're there to have a conversation about price. I took the approach of being very straightforward with people about the price and not overshooting the value of the property, because I don't like conflict. I like to have extremely high integrity, and I am not smart enough to remember what I said if I was lying or whatever. So I would just go in and give people the scan. I'd use this analogy, be like, hey, if you're coming to me, you had your house on the market, it didn't sell, you need to sell, you get their motivation, and then you're going to describe what you're going to go around that and be like, hey, if you need to sell the property, what, like, I'm trying to figure out how I would get to this point. Hey, I would, the CMA piece of it, like talking about the value of the property, I'd be like, hey, look, if you come to the doctor, if something's not quite right, and you go to the doctor and they do a scan and they find something, you're going to want them to tell you everything all at once, right? What a lot of other realtors do, somebody asked a question, how do you differentiate yourself? A lot of realtors definitely do inflate the value of the property. I'll get you $550 for your house. The house is worth $475 all day long. They'll say $550, and what that does is a disservice to the client, but it gets the signature. If there's three agents, I'm honest, and I say your house is worth $475 and not a penny more. Somebody else says I would list it at $499, and then somebody comes in and does a song and dance about listing at $550 and we'll get you multiple offers. Who do you think an uneducated seller or a scarcity-minded person is going to list with? They're going to believe the song and dance, list with $550, and now that $550 person, if they really are an expert, they're going to know that the house is only worth $475. They effectively lied to the seller, and now they've got to have an awkward conversation when the market doesn't produce $75,000 in magic money that nobody's going to pay, excluding COVID when the market saved everybody's ass. But right now and before that, they have a hard conversation to have where they basically have to dance around their lie from at their listing appointment. I could have definitely taken like closer to 75 listings if I was like a sleazy liar about the pricing. I was honest with people about the pricing, and that cut me down probably 20 listings, 25 listings maybe. But I have a clean slate on all the other ones, right? And then when the market, and then you can have a conversation about the price where you're saying, I'm gonna, hey, if you really want $550, here's the data that shows you the scan of the market, your CMA, that shows what the value of the property probably is looking past. Now, look, I'm not a fortune teller. Maybe that will happen. It's important to me that you trust me and my expertise and my understanding of the data so that you're best informed for you to make a decision. And what I'm telling you is that I think that if you market to $499, you're going to get more traction on the property because you won't be excluding everybody that's not looking at 500 and above. You're going to get more views, more clicks, more saves, more showings. I'll have more room to negotiate, and I'll probably be able to get you closer to 485 instead of 475 in that scenario. If we start at 550, unless something crazy happens in the world, I don't think that's going to get as much traction. I know for a fact the people that have their search set up to 499 won't even see it. And then you're going to go down the funnel, you'll have less traction at each step of the funnel, right? If you really think that that's important to you and you really want to try that out at 550, I would do that with you because I believe that you understand that I am telling you where we're at. And I think that you'll be rational about it if the time comes, if that luck doesn't happen. I actually had a seller do that, and I brought a MLS change form to the listing agreement, to the listing appointment. We signed the paperwork at $699, and I had him also sign a change form for $649 2 weeks later, dated 2 weeks later. Said, look, we'll try it your way. If it doesn't work, we're agreeing to I think it's in your best interest to do this. And if you agree to do that, then I'll work with you. And I got both of those signed. And 2 weeks later, I already had that conversation. House was worth $550, right?
Oh my God.
All along. I told him that too. But I said, look, man, you're just doing yourself a disservice by going over $100,000 over ask or whatever. So that's some pricing conversation. Now to the commission, you should already be demonstrating your value and then just say, are you prepared to move forward? What do you guys charge? They'll ask or they won't. Usually they do. But you can look up a million different scripts which say, hey, the industry standard, and we try to provide above industry standard experience for all the reasons we talked about. And we charge the standard rate of 5%. Do you have any questions? 5% and a $300 administrative fee for all of our, concierge experience that you have that we talked about in the rest of the presentation. Do you have any questions on that? Cool. If we're good to go on that, then we can start talking about booking your media. If they have any objection about it, or you sense that that's a big deal, or you haven't been able to articulate your value good enough, and will you do it for 4%? If you have 0 listings and somebody says, will you do it for 4%? What do you think my answer is going to be? Hell yeah, just take the listing and get the experience. Don't be an idiot. You know what I mean? Do it for do it in steps too. 5%. Hey, we can do it for 5%. I can do it for 4% if we sell it ourselves. If you talked correctly about our channel partner relationships, there's a better than average chance that you'll get the buyer, because Zillow has 80% of the buyer traffic, right? So if you articulate that and be like, hey, there's a chance that you can do it for 4%, you focus on that. And if you don't, then it's 5%. I would always be like, it's so hard to get a listing. I made so many phone calls in the morning, and I never wanted to be a cold call in the first place. I drove all over the United States and New Jersey and God's creation to get this appointment and signature. I'd be like, I'm keeping 3% of the commission. Buyer's agent can take 2%. I would negotiate for 5% plus a fee, and I would keep 3% and offer out 2%. If you have to get 4%, then do 2 and 2. Right? Just be reasonable and think about it. Don't get hung up on these things and freak out about it. And I was thinking, if I've got to make a deal with somebody to get my listing for the week, I wasn't trying to get 1 extra percentage point on my only listing ever this year or in the next 3 years. I had this mentality of like, I need to hit a unit this week. I need a signature today. It's Friday at 4 p.m. Sign the goddamn paperwork. I'll do it for 1%. I don't care. I'm going for 50 listings, not 5% on every single commission. Right? If you think bigger, and have an abundant mentality, you're gonna be more flexible when those situations come up. And as you get to your 10th listing appointment or 10th signature and whatever, you're going to be more sharp and have more value and more experience, because you can be able to talk through the process having done it, and you'll be better able to negotiate your own rate. Who's got questions? I'll take a pause.
Sarah does.
Sarah.
Hey, Gil, I have a question.
Yes.
If you're doing both sides of the transaction, so they're buying with you and they're also selling with you. So they're not contingent on selling their house to buy a house, but they are contingent on finding a house to sell their house. Do you recommend to put that they are contingent on buying a house in the agent remark, or that's going to drive people away? Just have that verbal conversation with the buyer's agent over the phone, that you need flexibility. You need
I would put it in writing for sure. If you'll have a bigger problem actually getting a signature and getting people to commit to put their house on the market if they don't know where they're going. That was a huge thing throughout COVID. And when I was doing this, people were afraid, oh, I know I can sell my house. The real estate market's hot. Like, everybody knows that. Maureen, I try not to lower the commission ever. I know my value. And Denzel Washington in Training Day or whatever, or whatever that movie is, where he's the other villain. He's like, if you do something, he's talking about killing people, but he's like, if you're good at something, don't do it for free. if you're actually better, then charge your rate. If somebody walks down the boardwalk and asks me to, hey, if I come for 2 people for surf lessons, can I get one for free? Like, no, because we're sold out. Like, no, you cannot. So don't be a commodity. And if that's going to get the difference between me getting the listing and the sale, then yes, we can negotiate that. But I don't just do it as a default, because I'm valuable on both sides. I truly understand and can articulate the value. In terms of putting in the agent notes, yes, you want all these things are making a meeting of the minds. Buyer and seller, agent and seller, 2 agents. It's all just communicating expectations and meeting and exceeding expectations. So if your sellers are not going to sell the property until they find what they're doing, then definitely put that in the agent notes. Make it very clear. You should also set your sellers' expectations that, like, hey, if you're going to be very picky about your house, it may impact the market value if your closing date is super open-ended, or your buyer pool is going to be limited because there's people that need to buy a house before the school year starts. Those people are not going to write an offer on your house. If that person's not writing an offer, I only got 2 offers instead of 3. You can do a lot more negotiating if you got 3 multiples instead of just 2 people, right? And if you just think about the whole process and explain that to people, that's totally cool. Maureen has a question. What if they ask for your experience and you're a new agent? Do I use the teams too? Absolutely. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. So what's your experience? I'm brand new. My license is 2 weeks old. The ink is still wet on it, right? They don't even know if I'm a felon yet because my fingerprints are still in processing, right? If you're that new, you can say, hey, that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked it. I asked the same thing. I got into this business to help people, and I knew that there's thousands of realtors out there. Some of them have 30 years of experience and have sold thousands of homes, and some of them are like me, much newer, right? So I've made a strategic decision to align myself with a group and a team that has sold over 1,500 homes, right? And let me tell you about the process of what that was like. I had to interview with them. They didn't accept everybody. We had a onboarding process. You don't have to say that it was 15 hours over the course of 1 week. You can say we had an onboarding process in addition to a real estate license. And I'm actually business partners. You're not actually just listing your house with me. You're listing your house with the Joe Oz Group. And what does that look like? What that looks like is you have me here with all of my expertise and training, and you also get my director of operations, Lauren. Here's her business card. You also who's managed and done whatever you could say 400 transactions, or it's probably 300 or something. Lauren, I was thinking we should like know this number, what our like new version of this number is, but whatever. Over 100 homes a year. We just put. I'm in my Slack channel, and you can show them. Be like, look, we're managing all these transactions right now, and you're actually listening to the Joe Oz Group. I'm in direct communication with Joe Oz whenever I need him. I can DM him right now if you want. But he sold 1,500 homes. You get us both. What you also get is our partners. What do you really want? You want a buyer to pay a premium on your property, correct? You get our systems, right? We got 15 years of experience. And my other business partner, Gil, he's not even from real estate. He came in and built this thing out. So now we have a marketing machine behind it too, right? Learn a bit, become a student of what the Joe Oz Group really is, and how you might not be different than anybody else who went through our onboarding even within this call, but you are different than all the other people that do not have all these resources. Understand what they are and be able to articulate them and confirm, be like, awesome, you want to know my experience? 0, I have none, but I am smart enough to know that you were going to ask that question. So I align with the dude who sold 1,500 homes, his business partner who sold 50 in his first year, the director of operations who manages 4 transactions a day. And before you get to that appointment, if you know the listing agreement and the rest of the stuff, they're going to be like, oh, damn, nobody else has that. Let me ask you a question. Who else have you talked to that maybe they sell 20 or 30 homes a year, has all those other resources too? Have you talked to any other agents like that? Can you hear the crickets? Can you hear the fucking crickets in that conversation? There's crickets there because nobody else has that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
find your weakness and your strengths, and lean into the strengths and come at them with the force of God and all the confidence of, does Joe Oz have confidence? Like, too much, borrow some. Do I have confidence right now? Too
Yes.
much, borrow it and lean on it. It's not feasible, and it's not the goal for me to go on all these appointments with you, but expand your mind and think about what's actually happening. Is they're not just partnering with you or hiring you as their agent. They're hiring this machine that you guys aligned with. Now, this is what I really wanted to point at, to the value piece of it. And then I'll leave a couple minutes for any other last questions. What does the seller actually want? And this is the knockout punch to the bring me a buyer question that you guys have that I didn't. Bring me a buyer and I'll give you 2%. Okay, homie. Bring me a buyer. Okay. You can sense my resentment from 2 years of being smacked down with that. I wouldn't say it with that intensity. I'm going to collect myself. Bring me a buyer and I'll pay you 2%. Awesome. What I'm hearing is that you want, if I'm able to bring you a buyer, and they pay you a reasonable price for the property, you would sell your house. Is that correct? Yes. Awesome. Cool. The same way that you're expecting me to have the buyer in hand. The one analogy I use for this is like, hey, let's go fishing. Do you eat week-old fish? No. If you're going fishing, you want to go find the best captain who's going to go find you the fish for that day. We're going to get you the best trophy fish that's in the ocean on the day that you're going fishing. Your house is not on the market. I'm going to get you the biggest fish, right? I have a track record of doing so. What I can't do is take you last week's fish and try to feed it to you, right? Look at we sell 100 homes a year. Most of them over ask. Everybody's happy. Look at our reviews, yada, yada, yada. That's the process that you're engaging with. It's like hiring a fishing captain with all this expertise to go and do it when your property goes on the market, right? Now, in addition, that's what I used when I didn't have all these Opcity channel partners. You guys need to understand the stats from that. If you remember in onboarding, there was a funnel that I showed. There was 6.1 million homes sold in 2021. Of those homes, 80% of those people are Zillow customers, are users of the Zillow platform. The other 20% of them are exclusively realtor.com. Everybody else sucks, right? Bring me a buyer. Where are the buyers? 80% of the market share is on Zillow. I actually joined this team because I want buyers too. I'm actually a buyer. I started specializing as a buyer, right? And I joined this organization because they have it. It's not exclusive, but they're the #1 performing and converting Zillow Flex partner in the tri-state area. I wanted buyers too. That's funny. I wanted buyers too. And I interviewed all the organizations that could get me business on the buy side. So I already found all the buyers. So what happens now is my team and I work with a ton of active buyers in this area. Now that used to be a script that used to be fake, but now we keep in mind of the number of connections that we get or whatever, like learn the number. We get the most number of we're the #1 converting team in the tri-state area, and Zillow is funneling their buyers direct from the consumer. I would pull out your phone or your thing and pull up their house on Zillow and click on a blue button. And as soon as you go on Zillow.com, it says contact agent everywhere you go, because their UI people are trying to get you to contact an agent. Articulate to the person that when they click on the blue button, if I'm on the phone and I'm calling somebody, I'm gonna say, hey, go to Zillow.com right now, type in an address of the house that you want to buy, click on the blue button. What does it say? Contact an agent. Understand that funnel and be like, hey, when you click on that blue button, we're the #1 converting team in the entire state of New Jersey. So the people, when your house goes on the market, or if somebody's trying to look at your house, any house, and they click on that button, their phone is more likely to get funneled to my team of 40 agents and we all communicate and collaborate on the inventory that's there. So do I have buyers right now? Yes. For your property specifically, I don't know. I haven't seen your property, right? But I do know that my phone rings a bunch of times every week, and there's 40 other agents on my team, and we're growing by about 5 or 10 agents a month, right? So if you articulate that you're different than that, and that we have a constant stream of qualified buyers from these channel partnerships, and we're the #1 team in the tri-state area, does that differentiate you? Yes. And then you say, hey, in order to the same way you're expecting me to be validated with a buyer, right? We are validated with buyers now. If you understand what I just explained about our partnerships with the leading consumer platforms, right? So we have that. What they expect from us when we meet these people cold from the internet is that we provide value to them. And what they really value is houses that are for sale that might not be on the MLS yet. Now, I understand that your house just came off the market, or you might not be ready to sell right now. But what I'm asking you is the same way you expect me to have buyers, which do you agree that I just demonstrated that we have a steady stream of buyers in your market? Yes? Okay, cool. So we're agreed on that. So I have buyers. What the buyers want is your house. So what I need to be able to do when I meet somebody in the driveway of the house that they clicked on around the corner from your house, I need to be able to represent to them with integrity, same way that I am with you, that I have buyers, is that I know about properties that aren't on the MLS right now. And in order to do that with any kind of integrity and a straight face, I need to meet the seller and see the property and understand if it if the basement's real musty, or if something's wrong with it, or if it is, that's fine. I just need to understand it so that I can communicate it to our buyers. And you can actually anti-sell and be like, hey, I'm actually a buyer specialist, and that's why I joined this team, blah, 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 blah. Is it okay if I just come and see the property so that I understand the inventory? When would be a good time for me to come by and just see the inventory, take 10 minutes to do a quick walkthrough? Can I come by at 3 p.m. tomorrow? Ask for the appointment 5 times, 10 times, whatever. What is the person going to say? Be like, look, I don't even list properties yet. You asked me how many properties I list. 0. I'm a buyer specialist. I'm focusing on these channel partners. That is true right now. You want to get to your first listing, you got to get an appointment first. Worry about the appointments. The way to get an appointment is say, hey, I'm focused on these buyers. My job is to know the inventory. When can I come and see the property? If you ever want to list your property, cool. You can get you somebody that's sold a bunch of houses on our team. There's a couple people who have sold over 50 homes on our team because we do over 100 a year. Also true. Now, when you go there and you're super friendly and whatever, you're going to establish rapport with them. You're going to see that they love the New York Giants, and so do you, or whatever the thing is. You're going to form some sort of human connection with them. You're also going to understand the property. And if you prep for that appointment the way that I described, become an expert at it, I'm going to run like 2 or 3 minutes late. But should I keep going or just cut us off? I'm just going to keep going. So when you prep for the property and you know the listing agreement and you've got all that down pat, once you're there, now the guard comes down when you get to the house, if that makes sense. So you're having those conversations, you understand what's going on, and the last little bit that I wanted to like blurt out so that we can make a real presentation about this next is when you prep for the appointment, the preparation for the appointment is not preparing for the appointment. You do that today. Like as soon as the Zoom call is over, you go to the MLS and you look at the hot sheet and you study the data in what's happening in the market, especially in the zip codes that you're receiving phone calls on. And then the habit that I would be doing if I was in your position and I wanted to become an expert in that area is I would study what's happening, what just closed, what the new listings are. I would read all the details on all the properties, understand if they're contingent on selling, and pay attention to all these things and think about the broader picture of things. Look at the prices, run practice reports. There's trainings on that in the MLS. Call the MLS, just play with it. Run a 1-line CMA, like figure all that stuff out, study the market for a half hour every day or more, and then run CMAs, that's in the university too, and practice on all the properties. If you are, this is the #1, this will help you on the buy side, and it's going to make you an expert on the sell side, because some of these houses will expire and you can go door knock them immediately after. When a house hits the market, run a CMA on it. Envision the house that you want to sell. you're going to receive one day, you're going to receive a phone call on that property. Look in the morning, see the new listing. They're like, shit, that one's going to sell. The consumers are going to click on the blue button on Zillow. And I'm probably going to get a phone call maybe on that property. Run the CMA on it, study it, run the comps, have them ready. Understand all the features, memorize the square footage, right? Study that property, book a showing. In that minute, you got nothing else going on in the morning, go book a showing at the hottest property that's new in the zip codes that you're going to receive phone calls in. Go to the property, take out your phone and do a video tour of the property. Put it on your social media. Describe your expertise that you learned from studying it over a cup of coffee in the morning on the property. Do a selfie, do an interview. This is what's the property, blah, 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 blah. You're doing content. Your sphere is going to see it. Do that every day, right? Now, eventually, your phone is going to ring at 11:30 in the morning or 4:30 in the afternoon, and you're going to say, hi, this is Gil from the Jaws Group. When would you like to, I saw you called in on this property. When would you like to see that one? 4:30 p.m. today. That's awesome. I'm glad you want to see it today because I actually was showing the property earlier this morning. It's amazing. I can't wait to show it to you. Oh shit, he already showed the property, right? There's a sense of urgency. I better see it today. I'm definitely going to go. This guy already knows. Later in this, be like, the pool was amazing. It has a new liner. It's awesome. Like, imagine you know that. That's you. That's a level above ALM, right? And then when you're there, go knock on the doors. Be like, hey, I got a phone call on this property. I'm getting a ton of calls on this property. Is there anybody else in here? See what went under contract. Figure out the numbers or just closed. Find one that sold for a lot over asking price in a thing that you're doing. Drive there. That house sold. Knock on all the neighbors. Print out the MLS. And do that. Right? If you want to prospect with door knocking, you can go. I'm like just rambling off ideas, but you can go to. We can actually print if we have a listing that has multiple offers on it. We had like 3 listings go live in the last 3 days. In our Slack, find a listing that's just blowing up, that's getting a lot of offers on it. Print them all out and go door knock the neighborhood. Be like, hey, I got buyers that want to buy this house. That one's under contract, but we have 3 other buyers in your neighborhood. Do you know anybody that's going to sell their house? What do the people want? They want buyers. You got 3 contracts of swing and a miss in your hand and your Zillow script. How on God's green earth is that person not going to want to talk to you and let you in their house? You've now made yourself valuable. You've made yourself valuable, more valuable than you would be, by aligning with this crew and this machine that we're all building. And you're thinking differently and you actually have what they want. You got buyers in your hand and on your phone. I have too many buyers. I don't have any houses. Now we're friends, right? Any other questions before Lauren pulls the hook on my neck?
Yep.
Do you guys also have like a magazine similar to the one that you hand out to buyers for the listings?
We
do have a seller's guide, right? But
Yeah,
I never do it.
Yeah, no one, Gil doesn't really use it. We do have one, it's a bit outdated, but we have like our agents we have like a listing high note that we send to the seller prior to the appointment. So it's like a digital version of it.
And
Yeah, we transferred to the digital version, and I don't even use that. What I would do is get the Lauren can drop the high note in Slack. Everybody is here in our organization or hit us up for it. It's Sam scripted. We scripted it and Sam recorded it. He's beautiful. We did it at Motion City Media. It's amazing quality. Just memorize it, dude. While you're driving, listen to it and memorize it. Internalize those pieces. That's the new version of the listing deck, that keynote that I talked about. We made a high note of it. If you really want to get into this, memorize it.
sorry, so is that available in the university too, or just on Slack?
The link should be in there, but if you just want a quick, I can quickly send it to you. So just shoot me an email and I can send you the direct link to the listing high note.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Of course.
What was the most valuable thing that I rambled about? Throw it in the chat.
I really
Nothing.
liked
Nothing.
I really like the part where you said where you're talking about just a little earlier about what to do to get prepared for houses that come on the market. in your area so you can be prepared with how and be the expert there.
Yes. Yeah. I actually didn't do that. I should have. I wasn't receiving these phone calls. I was just so focused on the listings. The thing about the nugget in there is practicing the CMA. And just by doing it, I'm telling you, man, it's like Mr. Miyagi. By doing it all the time, you're gonna get fluent in it, and you can run a CMA in person with somebody. Like if I could sit down at an address and do it. And maybe I'm doing this again next week because it's so valuable, it's timely. And next week I might, probably be I'll do a CMA live. Somebody can throw me an address and I'll run the comps and I'll have the conversation about pricing live if you guys think that would be valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll like nerd out on the MLS and what I do to become a nerd on the stuff. Because another thing I picked up from Joe is this phrase, the language of real estate. If you can use numbers and they're actually real numbers, 6.1 million homes sold last year, 4.3 million of those, that's 80% are on the Zillow's platform. You know what you're talking about, and it sounds like you know what you're talking about. It inspires confidence. What you really want is the confidence from the seller, and having these numbers memorized is how you do it. All right, we got to go.
Oh, thank you, Jesus.
Thank you, Gil.